Something felt off the moment she stepped on that plane. A chilling calm, the kind that whispers danger before it shouts. And as 14-year-old Eliza Carter straightened her deep maroon JROTC uniform for the third time, she had no idea she'd be forced to make a decision that could decide the fate of every soul on board Flight 462. Eliza sat quietly, her spine straight like a steel rod, radiating the kind of poise uncommon for someone her age. Growing up on military bases with her father, Colonel Robert Carter, a decorated U.S. Navy fighter pilot, had carved discipline into her very bones. "Can I offer you another drink, miss?" asked a stewardess with a practiced smile. Eliza gave a polite nod. "No thank you, ma'am," while adjusting her tie once again. This was her first solo flight, and the mix of pride in her uniform and the nerves of youth swirled within her like turbulence. The aircraft, a Boeing 737-800, hummed smoothly through the skies en route to Denver, where her grandfather waited eagerly. The trip was a surprise gift from her father after she shattered her school's record in the annual Virtual Flight Challenge. Years of intense simulator sessions with her dad had transformed Eliza into something of a prodigy in the digital skies. Unzipping her bag, Eliza pulled out her tablet and launched into a thick technical flight manual, her version of bedtime reading. While her peers were preoccupied with fashion trends and social apps, Eliza's bedroom back in Charleston was a shrine to aviation. Posters of fighter jets, shelves packed with model aircraft, and airspeed indicator stickers on her closet doors. Her dream was more than ambition, it was destiny. She would soar like her father in the cockpit of a real jet, wearing real wings. A man in his late 50s sitting beside her glanced over with growing curiosity. After a few minutes, he couldn't resist. "You into aviation, young cadet?" he asked, his voice rough but warm. Usually hesitant with strangers, Eliza lit up at the topic. "Yes, sir. I plan to serve as a Navy pilot, just like my father." The man chuckled, adjusting his rimless glasses. Gordon Miles, retired air traffic control chief, Dallas Hub. He reached out his hand. "Not every day I see a kid buried in Boeing tech manuals mid-flight." Eliza shook his hand, intrigued by his tone. "You were ATC? 28 years. Retired last spring. Let me guess your second year. JROTC?" Her eyes lit up finely, someone who recognized the weight behind her uniform. "Yes, sir. My dad says this is my first runway if I want to land at Annapolis." The next 30 minutes were like stepping into an exclusive cockpit of knowledge. Gordon's stories ranged from nail-biting near misses to military formation reroutes, and real tips on how airspace operates in live time. Eliza soaked in every word like an eager cadet on her first mission briefing. "You know," Gordon said, half impressed, "you probably understand flight logistics better than I did at your age, and I was flying paper planes into ceiling fans." Eliza laughed. "My dad says knowledge and instinct beat age every time." She recalled how he'd guide her through virtual turbulence, drill her on wind correction angles, and quote his favorite line, "The sky doesn't ask your age, just your judgment." Gordon smiled in approval. "Your father's got his head in the clouds in the best way possible." The stewardess passed again with drinks and snacks, briefly pausing their conversation. Eliza accepted a cola, then turned to the window. A kingdom of clouds stretched below calm, vast, unknowable. Her father used to say that above the storms of the world, there's always stillness if you fly high enough. "I'll be back in a moment," she said, unbuckling. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Miles." "Pleasure was mine, Cadet Carter," he replied. As Eliza made her way toward the back of the cabin to the restroom, two teens, likely 17 or 18, whispered to each other and grinned mockingly at her uniform. One chuckled. She caught their eyes, raised her chin just as her father taught her, and walked past with quiet pride. They don't salute discipline because they've never had it. On her return walk, something shifted. Near the rear galley, two flight attendants huddled in a quiet but tense conversation, their faces strained, voices low, urgent. "We need a doctor now," whispered the older one. "What if there isn't one on board?" the younger asked, voice rising. Her panic wasn't hidden well. Eliza's alertness flared. She didn't need combat to recognize tension. She stepped closer, politely clearing her throat. "Excuse me, ma'ams. Is everything all right?" Both women turned, visibly startled. Their practiced smiles kicked in like trained responses. "Everything's under control, sweetheart," the elder one, her name tag reading Sandra, assured her. But Eliza had grown up listening to her dad diagnose aircraft malfunctions by engine tone alone. This wasn't turbulence. This was crisis. "It's the cockpit, isn't it?" she asked, voice steady. They exchanged a look, not just startled, nervous. "Please return to your seat," Sandra said, this time with more steel in her voice. "My father is a Navy pilot," Eliza replied, her voice sharpening. "I can tell when something's wrong up front." "I'm not just some kid with a hobby," Eliza said, her voice low and serious. "I know aircraft systems. If there's something wrong with the pilots, maybe I can help." For a few seconds, the silence in the galley was heavier than the cabin pressure. Finally, the younger attendant broke it. "Tamara, what if—" "No, Isla," the older one snapped. "She's a child." Eliza stood her ground, shoulders squared beneath her maroon blazer. "I am a Cadet Second Lieutenant Eliza Carter, daughter of Commander Robert Carter, U.S. Navy. I've logged over 400 hours in high-fidelity flight simulators. I know the flight path architecture and basic landing procedures of a 737. If both your pilots are down, then your options just narrowed. I'm one of them." Tamara glanced around, then pulled Eliza to the side, her voice tight. "Both pilots lost consciousness within minutes of each other. We think it might be poisoning." Eliza's mind was already racing. "ETA to Denver?" "About 90 minutes, Tamara said. "Autopilot is holding, but someone's going to have to land her." Eliza closed her eyes briefly. Her whole life, every simulator flight, every lesson from her father had led here. "Then we need to speak to ATC and get Mr. Miles from seat 14B. He's retired FAA." Tamara wavered, torn between emergency protocol and the terrifying idea of entrusting a teenager with a Boeing 737. Just then, Isla reappeared, face pale. "Tamara, it's worse." The first officer flatlined for a few seconds. "We stabilized him, but barely. That sealed it." "Come with me," Tamara said, grabbing Eliza's wrist and striding down the aisle. As they passed row 14, Tamara filled in Gordon Miles, who immediately stood and followed without question. When they reached the cockpit, the weight of the moment slammed into Eliza like G-forces in a nosedive. The two pilots sat slumped in their seats, color drained, oxygen masks clinging to their faces. A flight attendant trained in basic medical care was checking their vitals. "Toxin, maybe airborne," she muttered. "Slow pulse, constricted pupils, shallow respiration." The bodies were carefully moved, and Eliza stepped up to the controls. Gordon began scanning the avionics panel. "Autopilot's tracking the planned flight path," he confirmed. "But we need to establish comms with Denver Control. Now." Then, right on cue, a familiar voice chimed in at the cockpit door. "What's she doing up here?" sneered a teenage boyone of the two who had mocked her earlier. "Is this some kind of cosplay convention?" "Return to your seat, sir," Tamara said sharply. "My father is a corporate lawyer and on the airline's executive board," the boy snapped, puffing his chest. "You can't just put some Girl Scout in the pilot's seat." His name, Eliza would later learn, was Tyler Wexler. "Young man," Gordon said, stepping forward with the calm thunder of authority, "I was the FAA's senior controller at Dallas International. We are in an active emergency. Kindly return to your seat and stop wasting the crew's time." Tyler stared daggers at Eliza. "She's wearing a high school costume, for crying out loud." "It's a Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps uniform," Eliza said coolly, settling into the left seat. "Now kindly let us save your life and the lives of 141 other passengers." Melissa, the other attendant, gently escorted Tyler out, though not before he gave Eliza a final look of theatrical disbelief. Eliza ignored him. Gordon slipped on the captain's headset and opened the channel. "Denver Control, this is American Flight 462, declaring emergency, code 7700. Both pilots are down, suspected poisoning. I am a former FAA controller. I have a qualified assistant at the controls." He chose his words carefully. omitting Eliza's age. American 462, Roger. Maintain altitude and heading. We're tracking you. Airspace is being cleared. Confirm no certified pilots on board? Negative, Gordon said. We're working with a simulator-trained cadet. There was a pause. Eliza held her breath. Copy, 462. We'll guide you step by step. Hold autopilot. Denver Tower prepping for emergency descent vectors. Eliza's eyes swept across the flight deck. Switches, gauges, screens. So familiar, and yet this time it was all very real. Real altitude, real weight, real lives. Her hands hovered over the yoke. We've got this, she said to Gordon, and maybe to herself. For the next 30 minutes, Eliza and Gordon worked in perfect sync with air traffic control. They rehearsed descent angles, reviewed speed thresholds, prepared for disengaging autopilot. In the cabin, Tamara carefully updated the passengers, offering reassurance without specifics. She told them the pilots were unwell and that trained personnel had the situation in hand. Most passengers took it in stride. But Tyler, red with indignation and drama, didn't stay quiet. They've put some teenage girl in charge, he hissed to anyone within earshot. This is a death sentence. We're all going to die because this is some kind of woke PR stunt. Murmurs spread. Eyes widened. Fear began to claw at the edges of calm. Recognizing the rising tide of panic, Tamara stepped forward, snatched the intercom, and spoke over the cabin's PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. I have an important update for you. Here is the truth, everyone. Tamara's voice echoed calmly over the cabin PA system. Our flight crew has suffered a medical emergency, but we're in good hands. A retired FAA air traffic controller and a highly skilled junior cadet daughter of a Navy fighter pilot now working directly with air traffic control to bring us safely to Denver. Please stay calm and follow crew instructions. Back in the cockpit, Eliza Carter could feel the pressure pressing down on her like gravity itself. Her father had always told her, fear is part of flying, focus is how you beat it. Now, she wasn't just fighting fear, she was flying through it. American 462, this is Denver approach. A crisp new voice said over the radio. You're on final sequence. Descent begins in 10 minutes. Confirm readiness. Gordon looked at her. You ready, cadet? Eliza closed her eyes and ran through every landing she'd ever practiced. Hundreds. Many perfect, many crash and burn. Her father's voice echoed again. Perfect is a bonus. Safe is the mission. She opened her eyes. I'm ready. She adjusted the seat, stretching her legs to the rudder pedals. Denver, 462 ready to begin descent, Gordon relayed. The next 20 minutes became a masterclass in tension. With Gordon relaying instructions from air traffic control and correcting where needed, Eliza guided the 737 down, her every move deliberate. Nose down 2 degrees. Maintain airspeed. 280 knots. Extend flaps. Stage 1. Her fingers obeyed faster than her thoughts, her eyes dancing over the instrument panel. Familiar buttons, familiar dials. But now, they responded with real force, real mass behind them. Then the moment came. Autopilot disengage, Gordon said. Eliza took a breath. Breathe, he repeated. Don't fly the plane. Feel the plane. Her thumb flicked the switch. The autopilot disconnected with a soft chime, and suddenly she felt it. The weight of the aircraft responding directly to her. It was nothing like the simulator. It was heavier, less forgiving, more alive. American 462. You're aligned for runway 16R continued descent. Speed and altitude nominal. Through a blanket of cloud, Denver's city lights glowed, and then, like a promise, the runway appeared long, silver, and waiting. Extend landing gear, the voice from Denver commanded. Eliza reached for the lever. It gave some resistance. This wasn't a game. Metal thundered beneath them. Gear down and locked, Gordon confirmed. Flaps full. The cockpit was tense now. Electric. Eliza gripped the yoke, adjusting for a crosswind gust. Every second was a balancing act. Compensate. Adjust. Focus. She locked her eyes on the center line. 30 seconds to contact, the tower reported. She could hear nothing now but her heartbeat and the voice of the plane. Hold steady, slight pitch up now. The Boeing touched down hard. A bounce. Then it dropped solid, the tires gripping the tarmac with a scream. Eliza didn't flinch. She pulled the reversers, eased the brake slowly, smoothly. Speed stable. Maintain brake pressure. You're doing excellent. 462. And then, after what felt like a lifetime, the jet came to a full stop. Silence. Gordon picked up the mic. Denver, American 462 has safely landed. We need immediate medical assistance for the flight crew. Copy that. 462. Emergency crews en route. Exceptional work. Eliza leaned back in her seat, her hands trembling uncontrollably now. She had done it. She had landed a commercial airliner with 142 people aboard. In the cabin, applause erupted loud, and emotional after Tamara announced their successful landing. Most didn't yet know who had saved them, but relief surged through the crowd like sunlight after a storm. The plane was surrounded by flashing lights as emergency responders rushed aboard. Paramedics immediately went to the front cabin to tend to the incapacitated pilots, while FAA and FBI agents began questioning the crew and passengers about anything suspicious leading up to the incident. When Eliza finally emerged from the cockpit, pale but steady, the applause returned, louder this time. People were standing now, clapping like she had just returned from war. Tyler, the teenager who had scoffed at her earlier, stood frozen, red-faced, unable to look her in the eyes. Was it her? Someone gasped. Did she actually land this plane? She's the one, Gordon said proudly. Within minutes, word had already leaked. A 14-year-old cadet landed a commercial airliner after both pilots were poisoned. Reporters swarmed the terminal as passengers began to disembark. A microphone was shoved near her face. How did you stay calm? A reporter shouted. Eliza shrugged. I just followed my training. And then, through the crowd, a familiar voice, Eliza. It was her grandmother, Helen Carterell, bowing past reporters with tearful urgency. Eliza ran into her arms. And there, safe in her grandmother's embrace, the magnitude of what she'd just done hit her. Her breath caught, and the tears came. Your dad? Helen whispered into her ear. He's going to be so proud of you. Just then, an FAA official approached, speaking gently. Miss Carter, when you're ready, we'll need a full statement for the investigation. Whenever you're ready, the FAA official said gently. Eliza nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her uniform. Before she could speak, a hesitant voice called her name. It was Tyler, the teenager, who had mocked her confidence hours earlier now, approaching with his parents in tow, clearly squirming under the weight of his own guilt. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he muttered, not quite meeting her eyes. I acted like a total idiot. You saved us all. His father, standing beside him, extended a hand. My son learned something today, about respect, about never underestimating someone based on their age or their uniform. Thank you, young lady, for everything. Eliza accepted the handshake with a silent nod, but her attention snapped to the terminal entrance as the double doors flew open and a figure in navy blues rushed inside. Dad! She cried, bolting forward. Commander Robert Carter, who had scrambled out of his training mission the second he received word, dropped his bag and caught her in a crushing embrace. You did it, little ace, he said, his voice cracking. You actually did it. The days that followed brought answers. A federal investigation confirmed that both pilots had been poisoned. Traces of a neurotoxin were found in their water bottles. The source: a recently fired airline catering staffer with a grudge and access. He was apprehended within the week. But that was just the beginning of Eliza's journey. Honors poured in first from the FAA, then the Navy, and even a letter from the White House. The Air Force Academy extended a conditional acceptance, pending age eligibility, along with advanced training opportunities she'd only dreamed about. 6 months later, at a solemn ceremony at Carter Air Force Base outside Colorado Springs, Eliza received the Air Force Civilian Valor Medal, highest commendation available to a civilian. General Halford stood at the podium, his voice steady. Tonight, we honor not just an act of heroism, he said, but the undeniable strength of preparation, determination, and the refusal to be defined by limits imposed by others. When it was Eliza's turn to speak, she stepped up to the microphone, scanning the audience. Pilots, officers, friends, and the entire passenger list from Flight 462. Tyler and his family were there too, sitting in the front row. People have asked me if I was scared, she began. The answer is yes. I was terrified. But my father taught me that courage isn't being fearless, it's acting in spite of fear. She paused, scanning the crowd. Her eyes met Tyler's, who gave a solemn nod. There will always be people who say you can't, that you're too young, too small, too inexperienced. But in those moments, you get to decide whether to believe them or prove them wrong. The auditorium was silent. I didn't choose the emergency, but I chose how I faced it. That choice is something we all have every single day. That night, back on the porch of her grandmother's home, Eliza sat beside her father, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars scatter across the sky like scattered sparks from the day's fire. Dad, she said quietly, you know what I figured out? What's that, Ace? That sometimes we spend our lives trying to prove ourselves to the world, but the real win is never doubting ourselves in the first place. Robert smiled, pulling her close. And that, he said, is what separates pilots from passengers. You've already crossed that sky, kiddo. Above them, a plane streaked silently across the heavens, its lights blinking in rhythm like a pulse, like a sign. That was the night a girl didn't just land a plane. She found her wings. Let's end this video the poetry. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. They said I was too young to fly, dreams too bold, too high for the sky. But I've trained since I learned to stand, eyes on the clouds, heart in command. When storms roll in without a sign, that's when courage starts to shine. When the world stands still and turns away, that's when I rise, that's when I stay. Higher than doubt, stronger than fear. When the world holds its breath, I'm here. It's not about age, not about size. It's about the fire that never dies. Some may scoff, some may sneer, some will doubt what they hear. But when the sky goes dark and wide, I'll be the one who steps inside. Above the fear, above the cry, I'll show them how the young can fly. Not just with wings, but with belief, the kind that rises through every grief. So let them say I'm small. Let them think I'm shy. I'll meet them at the edge and take them past the sky, beyond the sky, beyond their doubt, where courage lives, where hearts break out, where one young girl took control and proved the sky had room for her soul.